Hello and welcome to the kinthemusical podcast and vlog, where we dive into the trials and tribulations of making a brand new British musical, there are so many, and follow our journey on the way to London for our first ever development production in November 2023.
And I'll make them pay.
You mark the words that I say. It'll be the end of all we know if we allow them to stay.
So I'm Emil and I'm one of the writers here at kinthemusical, along with a whole team of other people. This is our first ever episode. It's our pilot episode, so please do let us know if there's anything that you would like to see more of or any questions you might have. We're really hoping that anyone out there who's writing a new musical can watch this and feel inspired to take their musical forward. If you've got any questions or there's anything you want to know, please do let us know. If it's the first time you've ever heard of kinthemusical, please do have a look at our social media platforms. They're all in the links below. We've actually been blogging for a couple of years, even though this is our very first ever YouTube channel blog and our first ever podcast. So let's get into it. So we're going to start by getting anyone who's new to this channel up to speed, and then we're going to answer some questions, the most asked questions that have come through our social media, and hopefully from there we can work out what we're going to do moving forward. We started writing Kin in 2018 and it has been a really long journey. We actually have managed to get in around 10 workshops, which is a huge amount of workshops, and I would say we've been in a really fortunate position to be able to do that. And with each workshop comes a new draft. We're probably on our, I'd say 30th draft of the show. It is a completely original story inspired by true events. So when you're not basing it on a film or a book, it's all entirely brand new. So you have to make sure that we're always trying to make sure that our story is compelling, makes sense, it's primal, and that it is relatable and socially relevant and all the things that people ask about. So we've been spending a lot of time doing that, and we are so thrilled and also really nervous about our development production at Teatro Technics in London, King's Cross, which is completely sold out. It's this November. Cast announcement is coming soon. And we're absolutely thrilled. And again, it's still in development. No matter how much we write and how much we workshop, I always feel like there's always more that can be done. But that's, I think that's what's exciting about it. And also, I think you've got to love it to be able to enjoy that process, because it is so hard. You change one thing and it changes every other beat in the show. I think the biggest thing for us is we're always trying to check, is it socially relevant? Is it interesting? I think we've definitely got the audience in mind when we've been writing this show. We've been so lucky with this incredible fan base that has built over a couple of years. We started our TikTok channel a couple of years ago and our Instagram, and we've now set up a private group called the Kin Community, and it's literally people from all over the world. And we're so grateful for all of those people because they've been part of the development process. We see how people interact with different songs and different, bits of artwork, and actually that really informs as far as the journey that we've been going on. And actually, when the tickets went on sale for the London run, it was really overwhelming to see people had booked from Belgium and Washington and literally all around the world coming to see the show. And it's just from following on our concept album and our social media vlogging. So that really is so inspiring. And I think that community, I think they don't realize how much for us that really helps. When you're writing, you know that there are people actually who are interested in the material, or they found something compelling. And I think that's really been really amazing. So we're so grateful for that. We just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who ordered an early fan bundle. So we created these early fan bundle packs, which was some stickers and a metallic tip pin badge and some postcards, and we allowed anyone who was part of the Kin community group to order some of those, and we literally are into our thousands of people who have ordered them. So we're so grateful, and we actually packed them all ourselves. We do it in between writing. And what's amazing is when you see the addresses they're going to, again, it's from all over the world. It really helps. When you're writing and you're sat there and you're sat down to write, or you're really struggling, you just think about all those people who have engaged with our platforms and our story and our social media. And that really has been overwhelming and amazing. And we're so grateful. And thank you so much. Testing all the work that we've done so far. So that means you're going to see the full 2 hour and 15-minute production with all the songs in it. It's semi-staged, so all the scenes, the actors will be playing out the scenes in the space. There will be some kind of choreography just suggesting the kind of world and currency that we're living in, and testing how they all go down with an audience and seeing what moments work, what moments don't work. It's testing the overall shape, the overall structure, the pacing, the different character arcs, but knowing full well that it is still in development, so it's not locked in, and we're hoping to kind of amend different bits as we go, so every night kind of doing a couple of adjustments to make sure that we're acting upon the feedback. At the end of each performance, people can scan a QR code and fill in an anonymous feedback form and just tell us a little bit about what they did or didn't like, and what they found compelling or what they didn't find compelling, and that will help us to inform the way that we move forward with the rewrites, which are always inevitable, and kind of where the show lives and hopefully where it could possibly go from the development production. The cast announcement is happening imminently, and we look forward to sharing it all with you. So I can't tell you what the theme of the show is because I want you to come and see the show, and I hope there's enough nuance for you to interpret that yourselves. For those of you out there who are writing and really are interested in themes and technical stuff, I would say what really made sense for me is, as a human being, as me, Emil, what do you want to shout from the rooftops? What do you want to shake someone and say, I just wish you could understand X, Y, and Z, and if you did, your life would be better, or I just wish people could understand this, and therefore, so an example would be, I wish that people could really learn to let go of the past so they could have the most happy future. If people could just only let go and deal with things that happened in the past, then I'd love that to be a theme. But then the theme attaches to a big question for me. So what is the overarching question? And theme kind of ties everything together. So really how I approach it is, what do you want to shout from the rooftops as a human being? So that becomes really primal, and I suppose that also connects to finding your own voice. So what do I really want to write about, because I really want to tell people this, because if they really understand this, hopefully they'll be inspired to have a more fulfilled life, or a more fulfilled outlook. And that really then attaches to kind of the things that you believe in, which probably will help you inevitably to write as truthfully as possible. And then you then take whatever that is and you think, well, what is the most interesting platform or vehicle to tell that story and to communicate that theme, or to get people to ask questions about that theme? So then you find a big question that kind of argues or gets people talking about that theme, and then hopefully you then divide that up and find as many scenes and characters that all connect to that theme. And that theme, lots of people talk about this, but being like a tree trunk, and all the scenes and the characters all have to come from that tree trunk. A very wonderful dramaturge told me every scene should be debating that question which attaches to that theme, and I would argue that every character and their arc should also be testing that question and that theme. So that just helps me to really orientate on the right path when writing. So hopefully every song, every hook lyric, it may seem very surface level at some point. So you don't want to kind of spell everything out as in here comes the theme. But there's a character we've got in the show that does a certain things with props, and actually that directly connects to the overarching theme, which directly connects to the protagonist, because our show is a hero's journey. So come see the show if you want to know what the theme of the show is. And if you're writing a show, I would say probably the first thing to do would be to try to work out what the theme of the show would be, or what the big question you'd like to ask is. And also there's a caveat here. For my money, there are lots of other themes within a show. And also some people would argue that you can start writing before you've even decided what the theme is. There are no rules, but if you want to save some time, perhaps try to have an idea about it, and then it will kind of distill itself and make itself clear as the writing carries on, and then you can go back and reorientate certain things. But I think if you're really clear on your theme to start with, it's so helpful because it really helps you make really good decisions about everything from character to story arcs to even situations and scenarios. There are so many different takes. You just have to make sure you understand yourself. Even if you don't agree with it, I think I'm always trying to understand people's different techniques when writing and their different viewpoints. I think that's really, really important. It's art, so there are millions of ways of doing it. For me, I just find it so interesting seeing how different people approach things, and also watching work and trying to kind of reverse engineer how they put that together. I find it fascinating. I think it's really exciting, and that's also because we're all wired for story. We've all kind of inherently got a way that we digest story, and we do it all the time. And you'll see this from advertising to the new TikTok realm. Really, people are really great on TikTok, are really great at telling story. It's the same story structure as like a full-length movie, a good advert, a good, the John Lewis advert, a good TikTok advert is about follows the same story beats as probably caveman back in the day around a campfire telling a really interesting story to keep people entertained. And I believe we primarily are wired for it, and therefore if you understand how we are wired for story, you can then see how your art fits within that, or perhaps you don't want it to fit within that. So I think that's really fascinating.
2 hours later.
And that's probably even more confusing now, but it's really clear in my brain. Okay, so I write in the spare room. There's a bed to the left of me, and I've got a desk at the end of the bed, and I've got 2 screens. I'm surrounded by lots of books on writing musicals and writing screenplays and writing novels, and then I actually have lots of post-it notes all around me that are ideas, things that inspire me or things that I want to have a look at. And I have lots of musical theatre librettos around, so I look at those for reference as far as templates and formatting and how do people write a parenthetical or whatever. Yeah, there's lots of scribbles around me. I like to pretty much write down any kind of idea. So if you write down like 50 ideas, maybe one will end up in a draft and then it might even get cut. I do generally play music when I write, and I find it a lot easier to write in kind of 20-minute bursts. Most of the writing that happens is actually thinking and talking about it. You'll hear lots of people saying, I used to think writing was just, writing dialogue. Actually, writing is nothing to do with that. Dialogue's like the final touch of everything. Really, writing is all the talking and thinking about what's going to happen in the overarching story, and also how that works in that scene. So I think you've got to do lots of thinking and talking with your collaborators. So I often have had long conversations with my collaborator Stefan and Pete, the musical supervisor, and Beatrice, who is the editor. And I think that we spend lots of time talking about things, and eventually the final thing is to sit and actually write out the dialogue. But I've got to be really clear on what I'm going to write before I sit down, otherwise it just feels so forced and unnatural. I've got to be really clear on where I'm going with it. I did micro collaborations with lots of different people, lots of incredible people. That would involve someone doing a demo based on an idea, and they would either do a music demo or a demo for a lyricist, so they would put all the lyrics down, and then from there we would then do a kind of mini collaboration, and I did that with lots of different people. And I'll always remember where I was sitting, where Stefan sent me the demo of the opening number, and I immediately knew that was the sound world I wanted to live in. And I also spoke to him on the phone, and we just hit it off straight away. You just know straight away, I think, with somebody. And then he came down, and we went to the pub together actually, and we just talked lots about writing and what we liked and things that we found interesting. And yeah, I think it's really important that you can be super honest and open and all the things that are obvious, but I think it's finding a rhythm together, and that takes time and that takes investment in time, and I feel like we've really found that rhythm. The way that we kind of approach anything really is we talk lots about it. We generally have to agree on a hook lyric or a certain beat in the show. We agree together, as in I promise you, and then we often spend a long time talking about that as the character. What would they say? We did this amazing thing called blue skying, which is something I learned from the Duffer Brothers who did the Duffer Brothers who wrote and directed Stranger Things, and they did a masterclass, and it was really, really interesting on kind of screenplay writing. And they talked about blue skying, which is brilliant. So the way that we kind of approach any beat is you just write out. So for example, if you're a scene set in a cafe and there are two characters walking into the cafe, you can say, Cora and Noah walked into this cafe, there was this music playing in the background, and Cora said, I really need to talk to you about this, and we need to be somewhere private to do it. And this lady came over and asked us for our order, but clearly knew Cora and said, and kind of submissively looked at her, and suddenly Noah realised that he knew her. And actually, it's kind of like a train of thought, and you kind of put hyphens in between each train of thought, and essentially those trains of thoughts can become bits of scenes. So you have some dialogue in there, and then some kind of parentheticals, and some kind of scene description, and then even some props, and even some settings, and even some musical ideas. And then you kind of take that and put it into some kind of beats. So we would then try to work out the beats from that, and then from there we'd start writing out the dialogue and finding a hook lyric and finding a moment to song spot. So we often do that together. So I love shows where I really feel like I'm rooting for somebody, or I really want someone to win, or I want a situation to overcome another situation. And that generally is because it's a hero's journey, and there are lots of talks about hero's journeys, and hero's journeys doesn't have to be one protagonist just on this like 12-beat journey, even though I think it's important to understand those things like all is lost moments and break into two, and I think they're really useful, and I would really recommend always following those things if you are just starting out, because they work on like a primal response, I think. But again, the caveat is you absolutely don't have to do that. And lots of people say, well, look at this example of this show. This doesn't follow that. I would argue that any show that I really have loved or film definitely follows a hero's journey. It's definitely. Even if it doesn't appear to be a hero's journey to start with. But that's something else. And some people don't want to write like that either. And that's obviously also valid, and there are lots of indie films and pieces of art that don't do that I find just as compelling. But I'd say if you're just starting out, maybe just try to familiarise yourself with that. But for me, it's really about somebody who is you just really want to win. You want them to win because they want something that is kind of, the stakes are so high that you really want them to win, and it almost looks impossible for them to win. So you're trying to work out for 2.5 hours how they're going to achieve that. And along the way, they get tests, and there are trials and tribulations, and they start learning stuff about themselves. And often it's a hero wants something really badly, but what they want isn't actually what they need. And by the time they get to Act 2 and they've been on this journey, they start working out what they need. And I think that's something that we enjoy hearing about anyway. I just think if you can really find situations and stories that really are about people wanting something so desperately that if they don't get it, something really bad will happen. And the audience watching along, knowing that not actually what they actually want isn't actually what they need, and watching someone discover that. That's probably just as primal as watching anyone that you love on a path of self-discovery and overcoming adversity. That's a wonderful thing, because I feel like that motivates us. So for me, that's what I find interesting. Oh, I have so many different hero stories. There was a really wonderful series made recently on Netflix, and they did this amazing, they always say, get your protagonist up a tree in like Act 1, and then in Act 2 in a 3-act structure, you're just throwing rocks at your protagonist. And then in the 3rd act, you actually watch them find their way down. And I think that's really interesting, because this series did that really, really well. And this character, I really, really wanted them to win by the end of it. And again, thematically and the pacing wise and all of the things just really aligned, and I thought it was really well structured and thought out and relatable and primal. And that I couldn't stop watching, because, and I suppose that's another way of saying you're rooting for a character, or you're rooting for a situation, or you're turning that novel like it's a page turner, because you're really engaged in you need to watch this person win. How are they going to win? And it's generally because it's been structured with a hero's kind of story. The first thing I did was sorted the hero's journey. So I just worked out all of the plot points. There are 12 plot points, for example, the inciting incident, the crossing the threshold, the break into Act 2, and I tried to work out what that hero would be doing throughout all of those things. And then from that, I broke it down into scenes and worked out what scenes would be able to fulfill that hero's journey. And in that scene, where the obstacle would be, where the turning point in each scene would be, to make sure that there was enough tension in every single scene. I also tried to work out what was the most interesting way of telling the story. So again, with the theme and the lie that the protagonist tells himself, what was the most interesting way of telling the story? So I was always trying to work out what that would look like. And then eventually you've got all of these beats of a story that you put together that hopefully create a overarching shape. And then we just kept hacking away at that shape and seeing, like, moving stuff around and cutting stuff out and making sure it was economical and making sure it moved quickly and making sure it wasn't boring. I think the biggest thing for me is just to entertain people. And entertain people doesn't mean just kind of laughing and, you know, howling with laughter and clapping really loudly. It's just feeling a connection, and there's like this third kind of spark, this, you know, like a train is attached to the rails either side, and then there's that third spark. It's engaging that third spark, and that's really making sure that every lyric, every beat, every bit of dialogue, every choice is wired for that trunk, which is that theme, and trying to get people to really attach, even if they don't know what they're attaching themselves to. So there's this kind of unspoken word and it's trying to always connect to that. And you know when it's happening and you know when it's not. And it's not as easy to make it happen as it looks, but you're always trying to. That's what we're always aiming for. So my biggest thing is, firstly, there are so many resources online and so many things that you can read and so many books you can get, and there are so many amazing programs. Even if you just do a quick Google search of writing a new musical, I think there are more kind of platforms than ever. The biggest thing I think for me is, if you're writing a new musical, try to test the premise with people first. For me, the most important thing is the actual idea. So, is the idea compelling? Can it sing? Are the stakes high enough? They're the things that people really look for, and they are all really important things. But I would say, is there enough scope for 2.5 hours? And if you are following a hero's journey, are we going to care enough about what that hero wants and if they don't get it? Not just if they do get it. I think it's, are we going to care if this person doesn't get it? I mean, I always think, does that group of people or that situation, if they don't get what they want against adversity, what are the repercussions? Because if they're high enough and they then you're probably going to want to watch. So I think test that by talking. Before you sit down and write something, I think try to test the premise with as many people as you can to see if it's something people from a log line would be interested in watching. That's a real niche question, but I totally get that. I use Courier New, which is screenwriting kind of font, but what I will say is often when I'm editing, I will then change the font because it allows me to see the words in a different way just for my brain, so things pop out that don't make any sense, and so I often change the font, but generally I write in Courier New, and I use Final Draft, which is a screenwriting software, and I've got a musical theatre plugin template that isn't perfect because it doesn't often allow you to write lyrics or sung at the same time. So if anyone knows of a better template, please do write your suggestions in the comments below. But Final Draft's great because it gets you to keep an eye on your changes. It allows you to have different elements, so you can pick your elements like character, action, parentheticals, dialogue, transitions, all the scene headings, and then it allows you to kind of have all of your beats. So I talk about the hero's journey, but all of the beats at the top of the screen, so I can click to kind of follow Noah or Cora's journey or track changes that I've made and easily PDF our collaborators' stuff. And we also can all, while we're in workshop or even in a writing session, often we can write from different parts of the country, even the world, and we can all kind of plug into Final Draft and edit as we go, which is really useful. And also, to be totally clear, if you can't get hold of Final Draft software, I also write on my phone, so I can just write a scene on notes on my phone and then put that up into Final Draft, so you can really write anywhere. And sometimes writing freehand just frees up a bit of your brain. Sometimes just writing down on cards, or I find coloured paper is really useful for me, so really bright coloured paper for me can often help with a moment that I'm struggling with, and then I put that into Final Draft for the collaborators. I've also tried to learn to write wherever I possibly can, not in just the most perfect environment, because I think you just have to. There is so much to do all the time that you're always trying to find different ways of getting in some writing. So often on the train, or even when you're I know it sounds ridiculous, but when you're at the gym on a treadmill, I will often watch the video back of the workshop, and I'm thinking it helps because I'm actually moving and I can't do anything else. And watching the video back of the workshops, we film every single workshop that we do, or R&D, and it's watching back the video and seeing, after you put it down for a couple of weeks or a couple of months or even a couple of, years, seeing how one draft changes to the next draft. I think another thing that is a really important thing actually is giving things time. So generally I'll think about a scene, talk about it a lot. What do the characters want? What's in their way? What's the most interesting and compelling way of telling that? So how does the scenario affect it? How do the people around it affect it? How do the props affect it? I often like characters to do things that kind of contribute to the tension or the character's goal. And I think a good thing to do is, I've lost my train of thought.
The question was, what font do you use?
Brilliant. Great. So I think I've answered that somewhere. I watched a Netflix documentary about a guru called Bhagwan, also known as Osho, and his followers, who all moved into this old ranch in the 80s, right next to a little town, and all the chaos and conflict that happened. And I immediately thought, this is so fascinating. And then I went down probably 6 months of just obsessing, reading every kind of book that was written on it, watching every kind of anything that was written about this show, and I just fell in love, and I couldn't stop thinking about how I thought it was really fascinating, and actually I thought there was so much social relevance to it. That's another thing, as a lot of people say, you're seeing a lot of applications or kind of how to pitch is why now? And the problem is when people ask that, musicals take so long to write. If you ask somebody why now, they've probably been writing that show for a good amount of years, and obviously, you know, the climate changes sometimes weekly. So you're trying to think of like the why now as to how do you make something socially relevant. I felt like there was enough material that not only was compelling and interesting and sang, and the conflict was high, and I could put a hero's journey within this to tell the story through their eyes that would come through the audience's eyes, and how that would then link to a theme or an overarching question that would then ignite something within me that I felt really passionate about, so I could write from my point of view, I think, and ask questions that I probably have, so therefore it can be really writing about what you know. And I think that is what writing about what you know is trying to find something just that aligns with you as far as an overarching question. It doesn't mean you have had to have gone into space to write about space. It just means that you've got to find that way in for yourself. And I feel like this subject did all of those things for me. And here I am 5 years on, and I'm even more fascinated today than I was 5 years ago. And as the process and as the development's gone on, it's become more and more socially relevant. And I don't know whether that says more about what's happening in the world right now or more about, you know, this subject matter. But certainly there are things that are within this that are kind of what's happening in the news today. So I think that there is, without it being kind of a really political or piece of art, it's just got all of these undertones that connect to things that I think people are talking about right now or interested in. So yeah. All of those things sound amazing, but really the development production is to test it with the audience and to get all of the people who've engaged with it so far in our community groups to be able to come and see it in person. I think that will all inform where we move as far as if there's another world for it and another theatre after it, or we're hoping that the way the audience engage with this will inform the future life of the show, whatever that may be. So the biggest things are to get as much feedback as possible and to be able to really work out what this show is and who it's for. I would say just keep looking out on socials, because there may be an opportunity for, there may be another opportunity to see this production sooner than you think. Just go to any of our socials and take a look at our link bio, and you can click on our community page or find out lots of ways to follow us. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that has given you more of an insight into where we're at with our development process and our writing. And similarly, if you're out there writing a new musical or thinking about writing a new musical, I hope it has inspired you in some kind of way. We're always looking for new ideas for content, so please do let us know in the comment sections below if you have any questions or any thoughts or anything that we should cover. And I hope to see most of you at the development production of Kin, a new musical at King's Cross this November. See you soon!